So we're started back up now. The Awaken Men is back, but now Daniel is out on vacation or relaxing or whatever he's doing. You know, he does have his private time, but I have a good friend of mine, Scott Wright, with SW Enterprises that act
SWP.
SWP
SWP.
Enterprise. Thank you for the correction. Uh, and we are here. He's going to be my partner in crime for the next 2 to 3 weeks. And well, I guess tell us a little bit. Let our audience find out what you do, or what do you want them to know of that you do out there.
Okay. Well, first, really, thanks a lot for having me. I appreciate the opportunity to come on and chat. And Awakening Men is part of the work that I do. It's one of the things that I really try and be involved in. And my wife and I work together on several different things. We do consulting work and mentoring work with people.
Mhm.
We've written some children's books and published some children's books. And but part of what I'm doing is I'm doing some retreats for men. My wife and I have found, as in the work we've been doing and trying to make a difference in the world, that in all the events and things that we go to for healing in that, the vast majority of people that are there are women. It's like usually around 85% of the people that are attending these events are women.
I agree.
And knowing from my own background that, I definitely have needed lots of healing, and I've still got healing to go. But I came out of a very disconnected place. And so in the learning of, in that journey, and, you and I have talked about that before,
Mhm.
but in the learning of that journey, I feel like there's some things that I can share. And one of those things is music. And specifically, what I use is drumming.
Mhm.
Sitting around the fire in a drum circle with men, and we do it with women as well. Everyone's really invited, but the retreats we're doing are focusing on men, and specifically divorced men, because I'm one of those. I went through a difficult time in a divorce, and there's a gentleman that I work with by the name of Hugh Vale, and he also went through a difficult divorce. He's quite a bit younger than I am. But we found in our conversations that our experiences were so similar that we felt like it was something we really needed to concentrate on, and helping men, because we actually, it was almost, I won't even say almost, it was a miraculous event. We ran into this woman who owns a ranch in central Utah, and she happened to be an attorney.
Mhm.
And she's a family attorney, so she sees divorce every day. And she, in her words, she was helping to break up families constantly. And she wanted to do something different to bring about some healing. Even if those families do split up, there still needs to be a lot of healing. And she was witnessing men when they were getting divorced going into depression, being diagnosed with PTSD. Things happening to them where their children were being kept from them, and it was these very traumatic things, and they were committing suicide or going into addictions of all manners, of alcoholism and drug addiction and sex addiction and all sorts of things. And we had a conversation with her. We met her at a teepee. Ray and I met her in a teepee one day, and we were doing some music together with some people. And she turned to Ray and she said, we had talked a little bit, and I'd played some music, and she turned to Ray and she said, I don't know why, but I need to know you guys. And there was just this, one of those serendipitous moments, and we just started having a little bit of a conversation while we were there. And then 2 months went by, and we never were in contact. We got each other's contact info. And Ray sends me, was talking to me one night. That's my wife, Ray, and I call her Ray. She said, this woman, her name's Marla, she's an attorney, and she said, remember her? She was in the teepee. We met her, and I was like, yeah, I remember. She goes, well, we really need to reach out to her. She said she has this ranch or something, and maybe we could do some retreats or some work with her or whatever. Let's reach out to her. So she starts typing a note on her phone, she's in, just in a text message. And you know how when you're typing a message and the three little dots come up because someone's sending a message to you?
Yeah.
So she's in the text, writing a text to Marla. She's just finished it. She hands me the phone to kind of proofread it and make sure that it's what I want to say with her, because we're kind of sending it together. And I'm reading it and I'm like, what are these three little dots here? She looks at it. She goes, I don't know. That's kind of weird. All of a sudden, boom, message comes in from Marla before we even sent one.
Synchronistic things. I love that kind of stuff.
It was crazy. And she's like, I've been thinking about you guys, we really need to have a conversation. And so we set up a time. We went down to her office, she and I and Hugh. And I had been in meditation a couple of times and really had some deep messages for myself that I needed to do something to help divorced men. And I didn't really know what that was going to be. But it ended up Hugh works with wild mustangs, and he teaches this really deep, beautiful, wonderful metaphor using wild mustangs. And it's something I'm not going to take the time to explain here, but I'm telling you, man, it's powerful, and it affects people of all genders, races, religions. It doesn't matter. The message it's just universal. Yeah. And it's about, letting go of the crap that we hold on to, basically.
Yeah, that's really it. I mean, you're talking about a couple of things. Synchronicity. I mean, that's probably one of the most profound things that we lose a touch of when we get so busy in those work.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
just passing you by and you don't even notice it, right?
Yeah, it's passing you by, or we call it coincidence.
Yes, exactly.
And it's
or we say stuff like, "Well, that's weird." Well, it's not weird at all.
Yeah, there's a reason why everything's happening.
Yeah, absolutely. I believe that 100%.
Yeah, I mean, even us, you and I meeting. I mean, you were a guest on Exploring Possibilities. That's another podcast I produce.
Right.
And I remember Cheryl had the host there actually had a commercial for our Peru trip that we were planning, and then from there we just met each other. We met in Kansas City, and that was it. The rest is history.
It was, man. I mean, that was just another one of those things, right?
Yeah.
And you go into it, you're not knowing where it's going to go or where it's going to morph to, or you and I sitting here doing this podcast. Everything has led to this moment.
Yeah, it's funny because we try to control things, and if we would just let go of things, and I feel that's where everybody kind of runs into. It's we want to have this structure. We want to have this little box that looks nice and pretty, and really, the universe is not constructed that way. It has some basic laws, but that's
nothing in nature that lives that way.
Right.
Human beings are the only ones that think we can live that way.
Yep.
Think about the bristlecone pine tree standing up on top of the side of a cliff overlooking a big valley that's 5,000 years old.
Yeah.
You think they're worried about everything that's going on today or tomorrow, or whether it's going to rain, or whether they're going to get hit by lightning or whatever, right? They don't worry about that stuff. They just be.
Yeah, human nature is very funny. The other part that you were talking about divorce, I went through a divorce also. Sure. And for me, it was a little bit different because I had a traumatic event with my brother that got killed that I talk about here in some other podcast. But that triggered me to actually find myself. And then from there, it took me away to that. And I do understand there's some challenges to that. Luckily, I didn't have any kids, because I know with kids, sometimes the divorces can get very complicated because of that.
Sure, yeah, definitely.
But, it was part of the path, is what I always say. The path always gives you what you need. Well, I wouldn't say what you need, is what you should follow through on if you choose to, because we always have a choice.
Right. Always.
And being able to choose which way means it's just a different path. I don't know how you feel about this, but I believe that there's no straight path anywhere. I think it's all different choices that we make, and then that's the path that you're on. I don't think there's like anything like destiny is what I guess.
Yeah, I totally agree. And a lot of times we go into things with an expectation of how it's going to turn out, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So even if you've got, no matter what the expectation is, if you have an expectation, it kind of gives you this preconceived idea of this is how it's going to show up. And then when it doesn't show up that way, sometimes you totally miss it.
Yeah.
You missed the lesson. You missed whatever it was you needed to learn because it didn't show up the way you were expecting it.
Yes. Yeah. It's really funny because I know I'm very guilty of it too, where I actually get so busy and then this one little thing notification goes through, and by notification I mean something passes me by, and I don't follow my instinct, and sometimes it's really hard. It's like it's like, oh, holy crap, what just happened?
Yep.
And sometimes that resistance is actually what holds me back. And I've found.
Let me ask you a question. How many times when you follow it and you don't resist it, does something just unbelievably beautiful turn up?
Oh yeah, it's every time.
Every time.
Yeah.
It's like, you're being guided there. And as long as you are aware and open and allow yourself to take whatever step or choose it, like you said, that's when the things unfold in just ways that you could never even imagine. It's so wonderful.
Yeah, I remember the first time when I really connected all the dots was when I was just trying to connect with somebody, and it was a good friend of mine. And rather than go ahead and resist, because there was something about their personality that I didn't connect with, but once I connected with them, it was wow. It's like because they talk about first impressions, and there's, to me, the first impression is your logic mind trying to figure that out. But there was an inner knowing in me going, it's like, no, you should know this person. You should know this person. And there were characteristics like this. At that time, I was going through healing about very macho men,
Right.
I was very afraid of them back then. And by macho, I mean like the stereotypical thing that you hear in movies. So I was very afraid of that. And I actually, I once I didn't move forward with it, it's like, oh, okay, he's just going through his own ways of dealing things, and it was very healing for me. And then after that, it was, oh, okay, now I'm okay. It's like now I don't get intimidated by that stuff,
Right.
all because I just let it happen.
I totally agree. I mean, I'm not the one. I mean, it crops up for me. It's my thing. It's the thing that crops up for me all the time. It's anger. And I think, for a lot of men, that's the thing that you're dealing with the most.
Yes.
And it's anger. It's rooted in, who the hell knows where it comes from. You can sit and evaluate it all you want to, if it came from your childhood or your parents or learning or whatever it was, or if it's just an innate part of you. But until you start to notice it coming up and really concentrate on the fact that you've got to stop it before it goes out of control, right?
Yeah.
It's in those situations that you have to take a step back and learn. I don't have to get angry like that. What does it accomplish? How does it not only make me feel, but those people around me? How does it make them feel?
Yeah, and sometimes it's just recognizing the anger. It's like, oh, okay, I'm angry.
Exactly.
And after that, that's it. I mean, there's because once you recognize it, it kind of removes what I call the charge.
Yeah, because it's not good or bad, right?
Yeah, correct.
Because judging it as bad then takes you even deeper down the road.
Yeah, so many times, aren't we? We're always there. It's like, oh man, it's like I'm so pissed off, and you get more pissed off because you're pissed off, and then it just keeps going and going and going.
Yep.
It's a very cyclical thing. And
well, I mean, how many times have you told yourself, and I think I probably speak for a lot of men in general, how many times have you told yourself after you get angry and you realize you shouldn't have gotten angry? If I get angry at Ray or I get angry at one of my kids or whatever, how many times then does the dialogue start? What a piece of shit I am. Right? Why did I have to react that way? And you feel bad and you want to apologize and you want to make it better. But, a lot of times damage is kind of done and you've hurt someone's feelings. And you have to recognize that. You have to realize that before you do it is the time to stop it, not after the fact and then going back and apologizing.
Yeah, that's where awareness really helps.
Yeah.
And that's where Daniel and I talk a lot about this. It's like meditating, slowing down, or at least rather than react, just look at yourself. I mean, there was a great book, Emotional Alchemy. I can't remember who the author is, but
Uh-huh.
in that book, she talks about before you even say anything, stop for that 1 second, and your mind processes so much faster.
Yeah.
And just listen to yourself, and then from there process that and then allow that. And I used to think that oh man, this is going to take forever, but no, it's like an instant, just
Right.
like that.
Yep.
And it's just going down.
And believe me, I mean, sometimes I need a reminder.
Oh yeah.
And my wife she's very calm most of the time, and so it's easy for her to see it and not very easy for me to see it. It's like those old habits just keep coming back, but I've gotten better at it, definitely. And have we talked about the Santa hat that I try and wear at Christmas?
No, you haven't. This sounds interesting. Go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. So the Santa hat. So the Santa hat at Christmas time, when I'm out driving and everyone's out and trying to buy stuff and do things, and there's busy trying to do their thing. And I'm not a fan of being in heavy traffic, for one thing, and then especially when you're getting cut off and all that. That's my test ground for my anger, right?
Traffic
How long is it going to
for
be
everybody
before I stick my finger out the window and let someone know how I feel? It usually doesn't take very long. So at Christmas time, since there's so much of that going on, I decided one day, and I told Ray, I said, I am going to start wearing a Santa hat. And she was like, well, why would you wear a Santa hat? And I said, that's cool. It's Christmas, right? And I said, well, it's more than Christmas. It's because if I'm wearing a Santa hat and I am a stupid driver and I cut someone off and they see I have a Santa hat on, it's not going to make them angry. They're going to see it's Santa and they're going to be more forgiving, right? And then the other way is if I'm Santa, I have to behave better. I can't flip people off out the window if I'm Santa, right? So, and it actually worked. It helped be a reminder for me to not do it so much. And it was like that little trigger I was talking about to help you hesitate for just a moment before and realize that you don't have any idea what's going on in that person's life. You don't have any idea why they're in a hurry. You don't know, who's in the car with them, why they're distracted. None of those things or anything you're cognizant of, but you automatically jump to that next level of anger. And, that's one of the main things and problems that we're dealing with in our society today.
Yeah.
How much road rage do you see? Children are afraid to go to school because of bullying and all sorts of things.
Yeah, it's interesting because everybody is in. I always like to call it in my coaching sessions. I always say everybody has their own reality.
Right.
So whenever you're stepping into somebody else's space, and space is different to everybody. There is no, it's only an inch or two. Psychology or science will try to say that, but energetically, there is a space window, I call it. And when you reach that space, that energy kind of starts feeding off each other. And if somebody's angry and they've had an angry day for whatever reason, you'll sense that or you'll feel that. But the whole thing is we're not aware of the day they had. So we
know what's going on in their life.
Yeah. So if we're not paying attention to that, we're going to go and of course, we're our own little bubble, our own reality. So we step into this other person and then you intermingle all that stuff and chaos sometimes happens. And that's where I think a lot of the road rage stuff happens.
Yeah.
I'm a real easygoing driver. So I even get probably screamed at because sometimes I might be one of those that drives a little too slow.
Well, and I am definitely that too. I drive the speed limit. I'm not, the speed limit here in Utah on the freeway is 70, and I might go 73, something like that. But I'm not in that big of a hurry. It doesn't save that much to go 80.
No, exactly. That's
everyone else is going 80, so I'm just going to watch them go. That's kind of the way I am, and I really have changed my my way of interacting
Mhm.
because of this noticing that space you're talking about,
Yeah.
and realizing that I don't have to. I can choose to not
Yes.
be. And
Absolutely.
we all have to know that.
Hmm. Yeah. Society has taught us, has conditioned us, not taught us. It has conditioned us to think that we have no control over our
Right.
own lives, and we actually have we are the only ones in control of our lives.
Yes.
Nobody else. I mean, we can choose to follow this, we can choose to do that, but when it comes down to it, nobody can tell you you need to do this or you need to do that. Even in the stuff we talk about here, we talk about Daniel and I talk about doing meditation. It's like you don't need to do meditation as long just do something that works for you. It doesn't
Do
have.
something that makes you feel present.
Yeah.
No, yeah, that doesn't mean you sit with your legs crossed and folded and meditate like
Yeah.
in some specific way. I mean, that's never been my way. I sit down in my shed, which is where I am right now.
Hmm.
It's, a space. It's got things that are meaningful to me, and I
Hmm.
bust out my flute and I start playing my flute, or I bust out my drums and I start playing my drums, and I just kind of go on a little musical journey, and that gets me out of my head. Because if I start playing music out of my head, it sounds like
Hmm.
crap.
Yes.
So when I start to play music that's just flowing, that's when it sounds good, and I can just go on a journey.
Yeah. It's funny if for me, especially recently, I've been getting more into music, and I'm working on creating my own music type album. And
Uh-huh.
when I actually think about doing it, it never works. But when I
Right.
do it whenever I'm inspired or whenever I feel it's like, oh, it's that awareness again. It's like, oh, look, I feel a flute song or I feel a didge coming on. It's like, all right, let me go get that instrument, and then I
Yeah.
pop up everything and try and do it from there. And I
And
usually do.
follow whatever that instinct is, because
Yeah.
that's what will flow out of you in the moment, right?
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah. And
I
that's
totally
probably
agree.
when the best work comes out.
Yep. 100% agree.
Now you were talking about before we started recording, you were talking about New York.
Uh-huh.
That you were at the memorial center, the memorial for the 9/11.
Right.
Like, what were you feeling there? And you were telling me about the music also. I was wondering if you could share that because I don't think a lot of people know about what you can and can't do while you're there.
Sure. Well, it was my first time to New York City, like I was telling you, and my wife Lorraine used to live there, but everything had changed significantly from when she was there. She was there almost 30 years ago, so it's been a long time. It was, prior to 9/11 and everything.
Hmm.
She worked for American Express, so she was in the building part of that whole complex right there, and she was really close by. Would have been really close by to where it actually happened.
Man.
And so, everything had changed now. So for her, she's like looking at the Oculus, and she's looking at the World Trade Center tower and the reflecting pools, and everything had changed for her. So for her, having been there before to see what it was before, and now have it all be changed and knowing why it changed, for her was profound. I mean, she was having a few moments. Like I was telling you, at the reflecting pools, they're surrounded by the names of all those who perished,
Hmm.
and they're engraved in stone. And on the birthday of the people that are in there, they put a rose in. It's kind of engraved down in, so you can put something in there. And so there's a rose usually, always in the name of the person on their birthday. So as you look around, you can see every once in a while you'll see a rose poking out. And she was standing by one of those roses and rubbing her hands over the names. Man, I mean, it really brings up even emotional feelings for me, even right now,
Yeah.
of how profound it was of what had happened. And we were sitting there, and I was taking some photos. I've got a big wide angle lens, and I was trying to capture the pools and the building at the same time, and just trying to really connect with it. And the water comes over and falls down into these reflecting pools at the bottom. And I had my phone, and I put it on slow-mo, and I was showing the reflecting pools, a slow-mo video, and I started to pan up to go up the building. And as I was panning up, this pigeon flies like absolutely
Oh,
perfect
nice.
right through the frame from the bottom corner to the top corner, and then just disappeared. And I was like, wow, that it looked cool enough in person.
Yeah.
In slow-mo, it was just like, it was like an angel appeared and said, everything is going to be all right, man. Don't worry about all this terrible fear that this created, because everything in the end is going to be all right. And when we connect to nature, we understand that that is what's real, that is what's natural, and that's what's going on. And as human beings, like you and I were talking about before, we become very disconnected from that.
Yeah, I can only imagine the energy that you felt around that place. I mean,
it was intense. It was really, really powerful.
And then you said that you can't really do anything to attract crowds, right? So you were going to flute.
Yeah, I had my flute. I had my drone flute, and I wanted to play it just kind of as a tribute and a prayer for those that had passed. And there was a sign there that said you couldn't do anything that would attract attention or attract a crowd. Because, and I totally agree with that, because it's not about you, right? That isn't about you doing something to attract people. And I really didn't want to do it. I wanted to do it more as a tribute and a prayer to the universe for what had happened, and a little bit of healing. But I talked to one of the security guys, and he said, yeah, you can't do that here. You can go outside the perimeter if you want to and do it. So that's what we did. We just went outside the perimeter. They've got another building they're building there, and we went on the other side of where that was and played it. But I mean, you could still see the World Trade Center right there. And I didn't play for very long, about 2.5 minutes or so. But it was kind of a very, very soft, kind of sad, longing kind of a sound that was coming out. And it was for me more than it was anybody else. There was actually somebody walked by when I was doing it, was laughing. And I thought, I can go to the place of feeling like, well, why would they be laughing? Or were they laughing because the music didn't sound good? Or, what was the reason? Maybe it's because weird long-haired hippie-looking dude playing music in the square, and where's this coming from? I don't know. It doesn't really matter, because I was doing it as a tribute to those who had passed from me. It was my spirit and flowing from me in whatever way I could. So outside you can do it. And, there's a lot of tourists there that are having the same kind of experience you are. I think the people that are working there every day have kind of, they're kind of now used to it, and they're just commuting back and forth between the buildings and not really even paying attention. So but the memorial itself was there, but the line was really long, and we didn't have time to wait. You can go inside the memorial. I talked to a few people, and I guess it's really heavy to go in there. There's video of people, and phone calls people were making to relatives while it was happening, and things like that would be really, really difficult. But it's necessary that we remember. But I also think it's necessary that we understand that there's nothing to fear.
Right.
Terrorism creates fear. Yes, but we hold on to fear and allow fear to be by our own choice.
Yes.
So there's not really anything to fear. Things are going to happen in the transitioning of our planet to whatever it's going to be. Things are going to continue to happen. There's going to continue to be school shootings. There's going to continue to be terrorist acts. But the only thing that you have control over is how much love you can spread.
Right.
So that's why I played my flute. I want to spread love. I want to spread positive vibes wherever I can. And that was just an opportunity for me to do it. So I did it.
Well, and it's like we were talking about the road rage, just like the road rage it just permeates everywhere. So does love. And I think love is a stronger energy, and because it allows
they can't exist together.
Correct. And though we do get into a concept of duality, if we didn't have one, we didn't have the other.
Yes.
Also, which is really interesting when I hear a lot of spiritual people saying, you can't get rid, you should get rid of all of this. And in all honesty, if we didn't have the other, we wouldn't know the opposite of that.
Right.
So it gets.
I don't think it's ever going to go away. What we have to understand is the more people that begin to understand it, the stronger it becomes. You know, the love multiplies. It gets bigger and bigger, and we start to understand all the things we've been talking about. That life is flow. That we have lessons and we have things that come to us as if we're paying attention.
Yes.
But if we're too busy, or we've got our mind on something else, we're thinking about tomorrow, or thinking about what happened 15 minutes ago, we're going to miss what the message is about, what we should be doing right now. It's like Yoda, right?
Yep.
Like Yoda said to Luke Skywalker, you're always thinking on the other side of the horizon. What you should be doing is thinking, what are you doing right now? What's happening right now? Wise words from Yoda.
Yeah. Yeah. And I've always been very big fan of Yoda for that reason, because there, you know, when I got into the spiritual field a lot, it's the one thing I've always heard: be in the present moment, be in the present. And I was trying to define that. It's like, how in the world do I know I'm in the present moment?
Yeah.
And
it takes some doing to get there, I think, right?
Yeah, it does. And, you know, to define it, it's like for me, at least, and I always use me as an example because it's the only example I can give.
Right.
But
it's different for everyone. So you can only give yours.
Yeah. So for me, the present moment is the point where I'm just thinking about, like right now, we're talking about this, and I'm not thinking about the future. I'm not thinking how this podcast will end. I wasn't thinking about the past right now. I might be conversing about it, but I'm not. My processing is happening right here as we speak, and I'm. That's why I believe also that in schools they always teach you about talking, public speaking, but they never teach you to listen, which I think is what awareness is.
Yep.
And that's what makes a big difference in everything, that awareness.
You've got to have both skills in order to communicate.
Once again, that duality.
For us to share with each other, we've got to be able to listen and talk.
Yes. Yeah, and sometimes it can be challenging or less than easy with some people.
For sure.
It's always funny because there's always the one person that aggravates us or triggers. And let me rephrase that triggers us into something. And usually it's something that is not resolved in us. I'm not saying that they're displaying something about you. I'm saying that there's something that trigger has done to you because of whatever happened in your past lives, or whatever has come to be. And that's part of paying attention and recognizing that. It doesn't mean you had to do it or fix it or whatever. It just means recognize it and do whatever you need to after that.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
It's like, you know, your message to everyone isn't going to resonate with everyone.
Yes.
You would love for everyone to see it the way you do.
Oh, yeah.
Let me tell you what, I don't think that's going to happen, right?
No, never. We can't have 100%. And that's for sure.
Right. Then I think understanding that is the key, because I just got one of the things I did in New York. We went to an elementary school, and I did 6 assemblies in one day talking about sunflowers and music. So I did each grade separately. But as I was talking to the kids, you could tell which ones things were resonating with and which ones were just checked out. And it's with not just adults, it's children. All of us have different things that we're connected to, and different things that we care about. And just because everyone doesn't care about what you're saying doesn't matter. Ray and I were listening to a Brene Brown. It wasn't a podcast, but it was a video she had actually on Netflix. It was really good.
Yeah, actually, I haven't seen it. I haven't seen it yet.
She was talking about.
Yeah, I heard a lot about that. So, what did
being vulnerable and all of that stuff? You know, and that we get kind of crazy around being vulnerable, especially as men.
So, what were you doing with the kids there? I'm curious.
Well, another serendipity. This one was as miraculous as the first one I was telling you about with Marla. It came about because I've been teaching and talking about sunflowers. I wrote a children's book about sunflowers. I've been working with sunflowers. That's how I ended up knowing you guys, because
I remember
Cheryl came and interviewed me about sunflowers, and she's
Yeah.
like, "Well, you're kind of on a shamanic pathway," and I was like, "Well, what are you talking about?" You know, she said, "Well, like you're connected to the earth and the plants and all this stuff," and I said, "Well, that's great, but I don't know what you're talking about as far as shamanic path." But as we talked more and we talked about plant medicine and different things, it really was that. And for whatever reason, I had been led there. But in the children's book that I had written, it's called Sunflower Circle. In that children's book, it's a metaphor for life. It's the life cycle of a sunflower from beginning to end. And it's called Circle. So it's about the circle of life. It's about the circle of one season, 1 year in the life of a sunflower, but it also tries to put that in a metaphor of our own existence, right? Our existence isn't 1 year. Our existence is, 70, 80, 90 years or whatever it is, but it's no different. We have the beginnings of how we're a little seedling, and then we get a little bigger and grow and go through all of the different things that we go through. And so in that children's book, I had given one to a teacher at a gathering I was at, and she was from Arizona. And that teacher knew someone who was a teacher at this school in New York. Well, Ray works for a program in Boston, and she travels there twice a year. And she just happened to be going to Boston, and I just happened to set an appointment to go and be with her after her time was there, and we were going to go visit New York City. So in the middle of all that's already set. We know when we're going. We know when we're going to be there. The plane tickets are bought and everything. This woman finds me on Facebook through this other teacher in Arizona and says, "Hey, our school, it's called Evergreen Charter School in Hempstead, New York." She says, "Our school, our mascot, the thing that we center our school around is sunflowers. And I heard about you through this other person, and I was wondering if you would be interested in coming to our school and giving a presentation." And I was like, "Well, yeah, man, I'd love to, and I've got all these videos I could bring and show, and I wanted to play music and just connect to the kids and talk to them about how they need to connect to nature more and look at flowers and the seasons and, just a lot of different things." And I told her we actually had a trip planned to come to New York. And she said, "Well, could you make time to come here?" So we talked about it and tried to figure it out. And she set it up, and one thing led to another. And that's what I did. Went to Hempstead, New York, and I did 6 assemblies. It started in the morning at 8:30, and I did each class. So I did 4th grade, then 3rd grade. No, kindergarten first, then 4th grade, 3rd grade, 1st, 2nd, lunch. Then we went to a different school and did 5th grade, a middle school, and did 5th grade. But every one of them were unique. I mean, it wasn't like this canned presentation. It was like each one of them were unique because the children were different ages, for one thing. And with some of them, I went pretty deep. With the older ages, I went pretty deep and said, pay attention to what you're doing. Look around you at all the beauty that's around you in life. That's you. It's a reflection of you. And we talked about pretty cool stuff. It was pretty deep. And I played my Dan Moy, my little Dan Moy. You've seen, what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
I played my Dan Moy, and that was in some of the videos that I'd done. I put tracks of the Dan Moy on some of the music. But I had these time-lapsed videos I had made I had 3 of them. One of them was of a whole year of my sunflower garden. So I took 4 pictures a day for an entire year, from when there was snow on the ground, the snow melts, the ground gets plowed up, everything gets planted, everything gets watered, plants start to come up, they grow, they get taller, then they bloom into flowers, and then they kind of lean over because they die, and then they disappear, and then the snow comes back. So a whole year. And then I've got one that's just 1 day, because sunflowers are what they call heliotropic, which means they follow the sun.
Mhm.
So they wake up in the morning facing the sun, and then they move for the whole day, and then they're facing the other direction from east to west. So I had one of a sunflower doing that for a whole day. And then I had a third one, which was about 4 months, but it was a picture every hour for 4 months.
Mm.
And that showed them growing. And every day you'd see this wave. I'll have to show you the video. It's pretty cool. But they just, like, every day they move back and forth. I mean, it looked like a dance.
Yeah.
And the kids just ate it up. They were like, whoa, I didn't know plants move, man. That's so cool. So the kids loved it.
I
And
think I would love it. Just listen to you talk about it.
it was fun. And then I played my flutes, and I played the danmoys and different things. And
Mhm.
It's interesting. The kids that you don't get when you're talking, the ones that are disconnected from it, as soon as you start playing the music, zoom, they come
Yeah.
right in.
Yeah, the music, it has just a certain vibration to it that just
Yeah.
connects with people. I mean,
Yeah.
that, and no, it doesn't matter who. It's like when I do drumming circles, and just
Mhm.
just bringing a drum and just drumming, it's like brings people over, and they're like,
Yep.
it's just that tribal sound. It's
Totally.
that brings everybody in, and it's like, what is that? What is that? And they come
Yeah.
in and they want to join.
Why does this music make me feel different? You know, it's not like listening to music on the radio and all the popular stuff here, right? It's something, there's something deeper to it, because it's coming from your heart. It's coming from your
Yes.
soul, it's coming from your connection to the universe. There's a rhythm playing constantly in the universe that wants to play through you. And it doesn't matter if you play music or not.
Yeah.
If you sit down with a bunch of people and start drumming together, eventually it's all going to come together. It might not be immediately, might take a couple minutes, but eventually it's all going to sync up and come together.
Yeah, that's so representative of how everything works. I mean,
Yeah.
there's always, even on this podcast, I mean, we're getting pretty close to our time, but even then, as we're talking, you know, the conversation just starts to go with the flow, and at a certain point, it
Yep.
starts dying down, and it's just being aware of the time when it's time to either move on, either join in or you know, just observe. Because sometimes observing just gives you so much. I mean, I'm a big observer. It's like I like to watch things and I like to study things
Yeah,
because there's so much you can learn from that.
for sure.
Mm.
So much.
But we're going to go ahead and wrap it up for right now. And Scott, you will be joining us next week again, right?
Yes, sir.
And
same bat time, same bat channel.
yeah, and so one of the things that we do with our podcast, Daniel and I always give like a challenge for people, you know, whatever that challenge is for them, either to help them or, you know, whatever you see as a challenge, something that they don't do that would be beneficial for them. So I'll ask you, what is the challenge you'd like to give out to some of the men out there?
I would like to challenge men out there every single day to take at least 30 minutes to go sit outside and just be present and observe what's going on in nature. Go to a park, sit on a bench, sit by a lake, sit by a river, whatever. 30 minutes a day, and see how that affects you. Don't think about all the things going on in your life. Don't think about what happened yesterday or it's going to happen tomorrow. Just be present with everything around you. Watch all the life around you and see what you experience.
Beautiful. I usually add a challenge, but that one, I love that one. That I'm not even going to mess with that one. I do his and go from there.
Awesome, man. I appreciate you coming on. I think this is going to be great.
Yeah. Well, thank you for joining us. I know we'll get you next week, and we'll keep going on another subject here. Thank you, everybody. Awesome. You know, if you enjoyed this podcast, please feel okay to click that like button, or go ahead and subscribe to us and get notified when some new stuff comes out. And of course, we always welcome comments. Thank you so much, and we'll see you next time.